At least 1% from 10 gets into serious mental and social disorder because just focusing too much on feeding their ego. Do you know any person who has a too big ego? Maybe many of you are sitting here tonight. Maybe it's next to you, or this person is actually you. You shouldn't raise your hand, but you cannot lie to yourself. Do you know any person who got into serious trouble because focusing too much on his or her ego? Well, I know one person who died because of that. You see the statement on the slide, and now this person is alone for life. I am 26, and I was chasing an even bigger ego in the past 10 years. Well, and I'm standing on this stage, begging for redemption. I'm running an online education business with more than 100,000 students per year visiting our website. We have won the Website of the Year in e-learning category. We've been all across of the media, even in Forbes magazine, and I was elected into the top 50 young entrepreneur in the year 2013. Sounds quite selfish, right? The problem is that with these statements, I am feeding my ego, but at the same time, my soul is starving, and it should be the opposite way. But why is it dangerous? Why is it pushing us between life and death? Well, we will figure it out later. So, I was raised in an entrepreneurial family. Challenge, competence, performance, results-oriented thinking, these were my guiding principles since my childhood, as I was integrated into the family business from the age of 14. I became an entrepreneur. Beside my father, I learned the basics of how to be a successful entrepreneur from him. So it was quite natural that I will obtain my degree in Corvinus University in commerce and marketing. And growing up and socializing in an entrepreneurial environment led me to establish my own business. But probably, in the meantime, I was building an even bigger ego. So my father started doing business in 1989, and soon it was a quite well-running one that resulted more than 100 employers by the early 2000s. People started to know his name. He took part in fancy parties, business trips, meetings, and even famous people know his name. People started to stand in front of his door asking for favors. My father loved this scene, that people know his name, and he's an esteemed person. So we were living in a nice family house with our family, with my mother, father, 2 sisters, cats, dogs, nice cars. We traveled a lot, organized common events with the friends. So it sounds like a proper life, isn't it? But then, everything changed at once. In 2015, 9th of August, my father committed suicide. Many people, probably you as well, who don't know my father's story, started asking why. How can it be that such a successful man can commit a desperate movement? What happened in those 10 years? Well, as I just said before, that he started business so early, and it was booming, he thought that nothing could go wrong, nothing. He promoted a new managing director in 2004, and he stepped aside from the business, turned back to the business, thought that everything is just fine, nothing can go wrong. But actually, things started to go wrong. By 2010, he left alone in the company. And in 2011, November, he was sitting with my mother in a theater and suddenly suffered a panic attack. From that time, the roller coaster fastened up declining. He started to feel really desperate, extremely depressed, and unfortunately, he started to take antidepressants. But it doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable that the business is not going well. You shouldn't go down. It's not reasonable. So what happened? As I just said before, he was feeding his ego with these activities, But after these activities disappeared, his ego started to starve. There were no employers in the company. There were no business trips, no fancy parties, no meetings. People started to forget his name. There was no one in front of his door asking for a favor. Actually, he became the one who has to stand in front of other people's door asking for a favor, but they sent him away, treated him like no one. He wasn't a man anymore that people recognized. They forgot his name. And for a person who only fed himself with ego-booming things formerly, these things were just razor-thin knives into the middle of his soul. So it was a roller coaster, and the sad thing that my father was just a passenger, and I was just a spectator. I couldn't have any handling over it. I lived every desperate moment he had. I saw all the mistakes he did, but I cannot have any handling over it. So when police came with the terrible news, I changed for the rest of my life. My mindset about business and life, my approach of being an entrepreneur, that what was important for me before and what is now. That chasing money, fame, and results are worth nothing if you're suffering inside. People usually say that if the soul is suffering, the body will cry. And I don't want to wait for that. What about you? So, like I said before, I was also pursuing fame and acknowledgement like my father did. He was 35 when he got the prize Entrepreneur of the Year. It's quite a big prize, it's an ego-booming prize. And I thought, I have to get this prize earlier than the age of 35, like it's a race. It doesn't matter I'm 26, 30, or 34, just to overtake my father. But do you think, if I continue racing, maybe it's not just the prize I get sooner, but maybe I'm ending up earlier like the way my father did. So he couldn't feed his soul. He couldn't recharge his batteries because his batteries were worked by his ego. And I chose to recharge my batteries. I was working like hell, 7/24. Always said no to the bigger friend trips. I was the no man. And I can remember that was a winter. It was before my father's death. So I was sitting home. And I was so lonely. I felt empty inside. I slept a lot, even in daytime. I was depressed because I worked a lot. University students, like many of you sitting here tonight, are usually struggling finding the balance between work, study, and social life. But what is social life? For me, it's recharging my batteries, meeting my friends, caring about my family, doing my hobbies, these things. So probably, many of you are planning to do business. Is there anyone who plans to do business in the near future? Please raise your hands. Wow, cool. I'm happy with that. It's a really cool thing because building something from scratch is a wonderful thing. But I won't lie to you. It's going to be a hard trip and a long trip that can easily poison your mind. You have to be careful because even if success or quick failure will come, you always have to remember one thing, that always stay human. And don't forget, when your batteries are out of charge, what your real fuel is. It's a typical example of counterproductivity, that people actually start work more to solve the problems, but they're just creating a bigger mess. Rather, turn your face towards your friends, your family, and your hobbies, and just simply ask yourself, what do I want to do in that particular moment? Going for a cinema, go to jogging, having a cup of tea with my friend, whatever, it doesn't matter. The answer is easy. Just do it. And since my father's death, I live my life this way. Actually, I am more effective in work, but I work less. So for my father, his fuel, his body and mind fuel, was his ego, and not his friends or family. I mean, it was after he got depressed. Before, he was quite an active and social man. But after shit happened, he turned back to these things and didn't allow us to recharge his soul. Many of you may feel that I'm painting a bad picture about my father, but it's not true. He was a good person. And the only reason I'm standing here is to give his heritage further to the people, that I can believe that my father's cautionary story can save other people's lives. That I love my father and I want to remember him as the person who helps others, because he did it. He supported many foundations, he cared about poor children, he gave money to the sport clubs in our hometown, he cared about his family. When their friend needed help, he gave it to them. The only person who couldn't support was himself. My mother, who is sitting here tonight, is a hero. Literally spent all of her desperate minutes trying to save him and support him. My sisters, who ended their love. That besides he was my father, he also became my best friend, sharing all my secrets I had. We, together, couldn't have saved him. The only person who could save him was himself. But you can only help those people who are open to receive help. So what are these values? And that was the problem, that he did not realize that he has actually everything around him to survive. I mean, a healthy body, a loving family, supporting friends, 2 arms, 2 legs, and the possibility to create everything he wants from life. But he did not allow us to recharge his soul. And he couldn't appreciate these values surrounding him. Yesterday I was attending TEDx Youth Budapest, and that was a quite shocking story about a girl on stage called Reka. Reka came to the stage with a half leg. She lost her left leg in a car accident. It was shocking. And she said to us at the end of the presentation that she doesn't need her former life back, because in her former life, she wasn't appreciating these values. And after the accident happened, she thought that there's no way out. And then she started to realize these values around him. I'm sure all of you have problems, big or small, doesn't matter. Just think if you have these things around you. And if the answer is yes, please don't be desperate, because you have everything to survive. So why I'm standing here and sharing you this story that I should keep in secret? And I have to admit, this is the first time I'm talking about it in front of a big audience. I feel that the time has come that I have to reveal this story, that my father's story can save other people's lives and should not hide in the darkness. I thought that if I'm telling you this story, I will be, feeling ashamed to talk about this, but it's not true. The people and the entrepreneurs who has the same problem as my father's, they feel ashamed to talk about it. So I encourage you, if you know any person like this, or you have problems, please talk about it. And don't wait until it's too late. This is one of the reasons that I want to establish a foundation with my family, with the name of my father, that deals with entrepreneurs who has mental and social problems because of business is not running well, or is just running too well. Because we believe in the power of community, that these people can meet each other and talk to each other and see that they are not alone. Other people have the same problem as well. So we have to stop thinking as individuals and work in a community. So don't live in a me-centralized world, because chasing fame, money, results, and being work addicted, none of these things will be there to save you when you are sick. Only your family and friends can do that. But to keep them, you have to turn your face towards them and not just looking into the mirror. Do not work on other people's dream, work on your own dream, said my former boss to me in 2011. And I spent my last 5 years to fulfill this statement. But after a while, I realized that if I continue living in this me-centralized world, serious failures will come. So I started to give back to the community. I frequently give motivational presentations to the youth, workshops, and with other determined young entrepreneurs, we have established a free mentoring program for the youth to discover themselves and to reach their goals, even if it's a business or a project or something like that. And we are not asking anything in reward. So we all have to give back to the community. And what I'm giving back to you tonight is the heritage that I inherited from my father. Because when I was born, and during my lifetime, I inherited loads of things, like performance, challenge, results-oriented thinking, and chasing fame and money. But maybe these things can actually kill me. But then I had to realize that even with his death, I inherited more that can actually save my life. And what are these heritages? Don't live in a me-centralized world. While being in a rush, stop for a second and appreciate those values that surround you, like family, friends, hobbies, and health. And please, do not let your ego make you your own mind slave. Rather, feed your soul and break those chains for a lifetime. So here's my father. And if he could come back for a last sentence, I'm sure he would describe ego for me. That son, it's 3 small letters that holds you back from things your heart is dying to say, like I love you, I miss you, and I'm sorry. Thank you very much.